and honored to introduce the eminent speakers of the day. We have the multi-talented Dr. Narottam sir with us. His voice was one of the most recognizable voices of India, was the face of cricket on Doordarshan pre-cable years, was one of the most prominent cricket commentators, and he is a famous A&T specialist and an advisor on medical operations, Fortis Medical Council, emeritus consultant, advisor FICCI Health Services and Medical Tourism Committees, advisor Indian Medical Council. He is a recipient of several awards, including Healthcare Personality of the Year in the year 2012, Lifetime Achievement Award by FICCI Health, IMA, Business World, and many, many more. As a former chairman of NABH and the governing board of Quality Council of India, a man of fascination for vision. With great respect and honor, I welcome Dr. Narottam to speak here. May now invite him to address the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rohini. Good morning, everyone, from a very cold Delhi morning. I'm particularly delighted to join all of you. It's indeed a great honor to have to share the dais, so to say, with such luminaries. But I'm particularly delighted to glow in some vicarious pleasure because of the presence of your Vice Chancellor, Dr. Vijay Raghavan. We happen to come from the same institution, and therefore there is some reflected glory on me as well. So thank you very much. This is my third attempt at trying to communicate with the community at Sri Ramchandra Medical College, once at the health management seminar, and once I was invited to deliver an oration. And each time has given me a great pleasure. You are very right. The previous speakers have manifested a wide plethora of the problems that the country and the world has been faced with, primarily because of an unprecedented viral infection, which has now taken a huge toll, not just of the economic life of this country or the world, but also a huge toll as regards the morbidity and mortality that it has inflicted on mankind. I'd like to just talk a little bit about, and somebody should point out in case I'm exceeding my time. George Burns had once said that the best sermon is something that is has a good thing to say in the beginning, a good end to say, and the two of them should be as close together. You've given me a few minutes to speak, therefore I will try to fulfill my obligations towards that. This pandemic has proven one thing, that whatever we learn was never sufficient. And we are going to need to keep on learning more and more as we grow into not only just healthcare science, but also as individuals. I think I never in my wildest of dreams could have imagined the political change that would come in this country thanks to the COVID pandemic. And let me explain why. For years, it has been known that the public health infrastructure of this country has been in the doldrums. In 1943, the Bhore Commission report had given a roadmap of how the public health infrastructure of India should look like. Remember, 1943, we were not an independent nation, but after that, it was ratified by our parliament. And one assumed over a period of time that a robust infrastructure will be created with plenty of public health available. But what we know now is that 70% of healthcare and 80% of healthcare workers are actually in the private sphere. This has posed a huge burden to this country, and this has been exposed dramatically due to this COVID pandemic. So the political change I think this pandemic has brought about is that every politician today is aware that we have neglected in the past what we should have done for public health care in this country, and that has been rectified to a substantial degree. At least the beginnings, we can see the budding shoots emerge. And this is what actually Purnima had referred to when she talked about. So one is, I could never imagine that in a Bihar election of all the places, the MLC who was going to get elected was promising a health center. Because up till now, all that a politician needed to do, not so much in south part of India, particularly in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, etc., but in majority of India, you couldn't win an election promising that I'll open a hospital or a medical center. You were concentrating on roads, on roti kapda makan, as they say, the three basics that were required, and then sadak bijli pani. So these were the essentials that won you votes other than castes, etc. But today, the reality is that the political landscape has changed, and now it's important that at the highest echelons, you're talking about healthcare. This has been brought about by this pandemic. The second thing that has changed is the increasing focus on not just preventive healthcare as a part of uh, primary healthcare, but also as the need to focus on the specifics of preventive healthcare. And that is from the point of view of vaccination programs. So we were caught without a vaccine for this virus, but look at the tremendous developments that have occurred. And now that we have a vaccine, this will automatically get inducted into the wide array of vaccines that the country provides, and it does so free of charge. This has also brought in another angle to the primary healthcare or the public healthcare structure, and that is an increasing need being felt for public-private partnerships, about which we've been talking about for a very long time, but successful PPP models are few in healthcare. The third change which has come about is the infrastructure change, and that is that you now have bigger hospitals and even smaller hospitals having a different kind of infrastructure support in creating negative pressure rooms, special types of OTs. The entire structure of how a hospital in the future will be formed may well change thanks to this pandemic. The fourth change I think that has come about is the amount of research that this country is now doing, whether it is to create a dry medium to transport the RT-PCR test, or it is to create a new test to do research on vaccines. Everything has got a fillip. The fifth change that I think that has happened is self-reliance. You're beginning to realize that we didn't have PPEs when we started off. Today, we are the largest manufacturer, if not the largest, at least the second largest manufacturer of PPEs in the country. We have a surplus and we are exporting. The same applies to N95 masks or to surgical masks. So there is this increasing need that was felt for self-reliance, Atmanirbhar, as the Prime Minister likes to call it, and we have come up trumps on that. The sixth is what we are all doing. The changes that have come about are because of the digital revolution that has come up, and which has allowed, not only as was being mentioned by Dr. Vijayaraghavan, the teaching that is going on for medical students and for that matter all students, but also the fact that from across the globe we are now able to communicate with one another in a much quicker way and try and learn from each other. The seventh change I think that has come about is the change in telecommunication from the patient's benefit. And that change was very necessary, as we are now doing more and more of teleconsults. So it's become kind of an accepted norm for the patient. Wherever it's not necessary for me to auscultate or to do an endoscopy, I can at least give some basic information. The need and the growth of home healthcare has already been mentioned by him. Therefore, I will not go into it. But the two other important changes, the seventh and eighth changes that I feel have affected each one of us in a positive way, are the number one is the cultural change. So India had this culture of keeping our own space very clean, but littering our neighborhood. So spitting in the area or coughing in somebody's mouth was not considered bad manners. That is no longer so. And this is going to help us if this is sustained over a period of time, not just in the prevention of COVID, but also you'll find probably a reduction in tuberculosis and certainly in flu. So there is this cultural change that has come about in the community. And last but not the least is that the individuality that used to identify a lot of Indians is becoming less because now there is a greater community approach. And one of the side effects, I think the 9th and 10th points that I would like to mention, one is that the quick response teams that have got created. This epidemic required the government, which by its sheer definition tends to be slow in decision making, to take very quick actions. And I'm delighted. I've participated in many government debates, from planning commission days to now Niti Aayog days to ministry meetings. I'm delighted to report to you all that the amount of time that it used to take to get a decision out of a government office has drastically reduced. One of the classical examples of that is found in the vaccine research. Now, one of the reasons why vaccines would take so long to get through, or any drug that was introduced in India so long to get through a gestation, was because it used to crawl its way through various corridors. Now that has been fastened up, so to say. And last but not the least, and here I need to doff my hat to the youngsters of this generation, and that is the spirit of innovation. We've so far been talking about innovation, but now the youngsters are doing it. And the degree of innovation that has gone on in just the field of COVID and around it by people who are doing PhDs, who are in maybe your university at the present moment, has really confounded the experts. You look at Oxford, Zeneca, to any other place, you will find Indians being involved in it. And that is a glorious, glorious endorsement of what the Indians are capable of. So I think these 10 changes that the COVID has forced upon us are all positive. So whilst this has caused morbidity, it has caused mortality, it has caused economic loss, it has caused us to pause and be positive about a lot of things. And if we focus on the gains that have accrued out of this positivity, then we'll see that the India that comes through will feature a lot. I would also like to just talk about one other thing, since this is a leadership summit. Normally and conventionally, when you talk of leaders, you talk of leadership at the top. This COVID pandemic has proven that it's not leadership at the top that is important in saving a patient's life. It is, at least not necessarily, it is leadership at the bottom. Who's the person who's providing the maximum amount of care at the point of care in the ICU or in the emergency? Is it the professor? No. Is it the associate professor? No. Is it the assistant professor? No. It is the resident doctor. It is the nurse. So they have had to innovate. They have had to be decisive in taking action because many of the seniors were just not available. Or if they were available, they were sitting in a cocooned atmosphere out of necessity. You know, people like me, if we were on the bedside, we would have long been dead because of COVID, because of comorbidities and age factor. So I think the entire process of leadership at the top has been challenged by this epidemic, particularly in the healthcare field, where you're finding leadership at the bottom emerge. And it is this decisive decision-making process that they have gone through perforce that is going to make them better human beings, better leaders in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the revelation on change and COVID-19. We wish you good health and